portion of this conference tomorrow. So we'll end probably between 4:30 and 5 p.m. This afternoon. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to our next panelist.
Hello everyone, my name is Fleihan. I'm second grade American Culture and Literature student. This session is called Multiculturalism in Literature, and our first speaker is Christopher Fleihan. He's from Montreal, Canada, but actually he was born in Abu Dhabi. He's a sophomore student in Bilkent Laboratory and International School. He's also lived in Abu Dhabi, Beirut, and Istanbul as well before, and he has a multiculturalist ancestry in his family. Like his mother, I guess, from some Bulgarian ancestors, and his father some Albanian ancestors. Also, as for himself, he has always been fond of writing, and since high school, he has taken it very much seriously, and he loves poetry and prose. So let's give it up for Christopher Fleihan.
So I'll be speaking about multiculturalism in literature. Throughout all of human history, literature has acted as an emotional medium for writers and poets from the ancient Greek states 2,000 years ago to the 21st century. Multiculturalism, on the other hand, is a facet of society that has existed ever since immigration and the merging of two vastly different societies and backgrounds on the same soil has. To say the least, the idea of multiculturalism has been present in various communities and thought processes since structured societies began to exist. Even further, an idea of people with various backgrounds living together in harmony has served as the concept of a utopia for people ever since modern thought was formed. To pave a pathway for the future and learn from failed and successful attempts at forming a multicultural society, it is absolutely necessary to view the literature that spans over the ages and thus unlock a gateway to the many thoughts and emotions of the people that had lived throughout them. One of the oldest pieces of literature that has passed through the hands of students and professors alike in the 20th and the 21st century is the works of Homer. His epic poem, the Iliad, is set during the Trojan War, which serves as a perfect example of the state of relations between men during times before the Common Era. There is nothing more alive and more agonized than man of all that breathe and crawl across the earth, states Zeus, which means to represent the Homeric view of men that are constantly battling one another and constantly being struck by agony due to the will of Mount Olympus. These few lines of quotation from the god of thunder in one of the greatest epics from ancient Greece shows one of the greatest thinkers of that era believed that men were destined to battle one another and feel pain. This divide between men that fostered conflict was said to have been created by the gods and actively enforced for their entertainment. A Trojan, for example, was not created equal to an Athenian, and neither was a Greek created equal to a barbarian. No men were the same, as they were born in different lands and birthed by different mothers. These differences in men created differences in society and differences in caste, which all was then attributed to the gods who had created these men differently. A few thousand years later, and right before the widespread use of the printing press, William Shakespeare began to express his ideologies and beliefs in the Globe Theatre. Speaking to noblemen and the common folk and his audience alike, Shakespeare was a great thinker and an intelligent man of his society at the time. His plays, such as Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, are widespread and known, yet one of his other plays, The Tempest, is one that touches upon the belief of multiculturalism and its roles in the colonial society of Western Europe. In The Tempest, interactions between people of different societies are described in a single way. Two different parties from two different societies meet, and the more intellectual or the more physically powerful one of the two, more often than not, will result in enforcing power or control over the lesser party. This, of course, is displayed in Prospero, an Italian, and his dominion over the island that was once inhabited by another man native to it, Caliban. Lacking in intelligence, Caliban was ultimately enslaved by Prospero after attempting to populate the island with offspring of himself, drawing parallels in a very Shakespearean fashion to the naivety and lack of knowledge when it came to the colonization of the Americas. According to the men of the colonial era, interaction between two cultures did not always result in conflict, but always resulted in the yielding of one party's power to the other. Following the peak of the Renaissance, the idea of a stranger or a foreigner developed and morphed into something more than an idea of dominance and submission, but more into the idea of mystery. Anne Radcliffe, of course, portrays the idea of mystery and foreigners continuously throughout her famed Gothic novel titled The Mysteries of Udolpho. In it, a French woman from Gascony travels over the Pyrenees to meet a man in Roussillon, modern-day Catalonia. Written by an English author, The Mysteries of Udolpho serves to act as an example of the portrayal of foreign countries and foreign affairs by an English perspective. In England, both Anne Radcliffe portrays foreign people as queer with queer intentions and queer actions. In Northanger Abbey, Jane Austen parodies Anne Radcliffe, but still manages to portray the same kind of fleeing feeling. This, of course, shows how much the perception of foreigners has developed since the beginning of the Renaissance and the beginnings of the colonial era. In 1794, the American Revolution had happened, and the era of colonialism was dying down, with the beginnings of the 1800s. With this, of course, was also dying the perception of dominance over foreign peoples and cultures. Through the analysis of these several pieces, it is made clear and evident that the perception of multiculturalism and different cultures has evolved massively throughout the years. Even as recent as the late 1700s and the early 1800s, staying within one's own culture was typically enforced and seen as normal, as the foreign were portrayed as odd and dangerous, such as in The Mysteries of Udolpho. Despite this, the evolution trend is made apparent when literature is viewed over a vast amount of time. Thousands of years ago, Homer spoke of gods intending to create different cultures and different men differently, and that the divine itself intended on bloodshed between separate factions. Hundreds of years ago, Shakespeare spoke of how Western and civilized cultures are to dominate and subdue cultures that are less developed. 24 decades ago, on the other hand, Anne Radcliffe and Jane Austen spoke of the queer behaviors of people merely across a small, narrow channel. These revolutions in thinking and the path that has been followed truly illuminates the amount of freedom people have in their choices of life and the multiculturalism that exists in the world today. Between Homer and Jane Austen, there is a large difference in how foreigners and different cultures are perceived. However, there is also a large difference between Jane Austen and the present day as well. When in doubt and questioning the true tolerance modern society has towards other races and multiculturalism, all that is necessary is to view different perspectives on tolerance from the past. After all, nothing is more eye-opening than viewing opposing, clashing, yet also evolving perspectives, plentiful in literature across the ages. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's actually not specifically about your presentation, but I'm just curious, these texts that you mentioned, are they ones that you're reading as part of your curriculum, or do you read them, have you read them for fun on the outside?
Partially. I mean, we read The Tempest in our curriculum, but all the other texts that I mentioned were were texts that I read like out of leisure.
That's great, because you don't often encounter high school students who read like Castle of Otranto, just, on the weekend.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.